Hello and welcome to the very first official episode of Say Wallahi. My name is Muhammad. I'm joined today with my co-host who's also named Muhammad. Hopefully that doesn't get too confusing. You know, it shows the originality of Somali people, you know?
I think Muhammad and Muhammad.
Oh,
To make it easier.
You know? Well, when I was born, my name was supposed to be Abdullahi when I was first born, you know that?
Oh.
And then for some reason they said, nah, man, every firstborn is supposed to be named Muhammad.
Yeah, every family has to have a Muhammad.
On today's show, apart from being an overall introduction piece, we will be discussing topics pertaining to the country of Somalia, its history, culture, and people. Along the way, our topics will range from current events unfolding within Somalia and the community at large, while exploring past examples in order to draw comparisons and better understand our present circumstances. Now, as a disclaimer, and to provide a bit of context for how this program will work exactly, Say Wallahi is not a debate podcast, although Muhammad and I may have passionate disagreements on certain topics.
Absolutely.
That is not the main focus of the show. Furthermore, we are not claiming to be any sort of final authority on the information provided here, right? We cite our sources as best we can, and any research we've done prior will be documented as well. What this means is that we are not above making any sort of retractions or corrections that you as a listener may catch. We want to build a community here, and we need your help to do so. Now, with all of that housekeeping out of the way, let's start the show.
All right.
Okay. So beginning here, Somalia, and most of this information, if you're a Somali, you know this stuff, all right? And we salute your intelligence, and we bow down to your, amazing akli.
Sense of knowing your history.
Knowing
and
your history, okay? That's kudos to you. But some of this stuff, there's people in the world that don't know, and we have to,
There's Somalis that don't know. We have different experiences after 1990, after the Civil War. We all have different experiences. Yeah, some of
different
us,
trajectory, different paths.
Absolutely,
that done, right? Somalia, which is officially recognized as the Federal Republic of Somalia, is a sovereign state which gained its independence on July 1st, 1960. Right? The space it occupies is commonly referred to as the Horn of Africa. It is bordered by Ethiopia to the west, Djibouti to the northwest, the Gulf of Aden to the north, the Indian Ocean to the east, and Kenya to the southwest. Right? So just to kind of give you a bit of context of where Somalia is on the map, what area are we discussing? Who are we talking about? That's where Somalia is. Yeah?
Geeska Africa. The Horn.
The Horn of Africa. It's farthest eastern point, right? Somalia has the longest coastline on all of mainland Africa. And what does that mean, basically? Somalia, the place that is located from my research that I've done is basically, throughout history, Somalia has had a very strategic location.
Yeah, very strategic. Trade,
all
that
merchants,
stuff.
all that stuff. The longest coastline basically means that means more boats can dock. Fishermen have easier access to fish and cast their nets. You have all these merchants and traders that can come to one area and do business.
Some of the biggest cities developed because of the trade between Africa and the Indian Ocean, countries in the Indian Ocean, from India to Persia to
it's basically was a hub of trade. And to give you guys a little bit more of context of where Somalia is geographically and what the land looks like, Somalia is roughly 246,200 square miles. It is the largest African country on a continent consisting of 54 countries.
Is it largest?
It is the 19th largest.
19th largest.
Yeah, and there's 54 countries in Africa, right? Oh. In the continent. I didn't even know Somalia was that big, personally. It is the 43rd largest country in the world, consisting of
43rd.
43rd, yeah, and 196 recognized nations in the world. Somalia is the 43rd.
So we have big space.
It's a big space.
And if you look at I think you're gonna get to the population too. Yeah. If you look at the population, then there's more land than the population.
Exactly. There's way more land. Unoccupied,
It's empty.
It's empty space. But Somalia, these type of things is what the podcast is about. It's things that make you scratch your head, that you may have thought about, that you weren't aware of, but when you put it in context of the show, it's like, oh, okay, now I know some new information about Somalia. So for scale, it's 2.5 times larger than the United Kingdom, larger than Germany, Japan, and Spain. If Somalia were a state of the U.S., it would be the third largest state following Alaska and Texas, respectively. So it's bigger than California, essentially. It's huge. It's massive.
Wow.
So, and just like things like this, I had no idea.
And that's the Somali that we're talking about is the Somali map as far as the political map, the border map that recognizes Somalia. If we add the Somali ethnic populations live and count that as a part of the ethnic Somali inhabited areas, then you also might say Ogadennia area is also inhabited by 90% Somalis.
Or Djibouti
Southeast
has a lot of Somali population too.
Djibouti
is we're just talking. We're
ethnically Somali and Afar.
Yep. In this context, we're just talking about the land.
The land. Yep.
What's recognized internationally as the border of the country of Somalia. And good point that you brought up the people ethnically of Somalia. In terms of culture, religion, ethnicity, and linguistics, it has been described as the most homogeneous country in Africa. Somalia has an estimated population of around 15 million, as recorded by the official World Population Review 2018 this year. So there's 15 million Somali people
living in Somalia.
That's
right?
not
counting
not counting the
diaspora.
No, nothing like that, right? And Somalia is rapidly expanding with almost 3% annual population growth and a high fertility rate. Right?
Keep having babies, mashallah.
It's 6.2 children per woman, which is the second highest in the world. There are 2 cities.
Who's before us?
Niger.
So, Niger.
When I looked at the list, when I looked up the information on the research on the websites, it's basically maybe the top 15 are all in Africa.
That's what the future is.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, Africa, there's the population. If you divide up the population by age, Afrikanka are young. Africa is a young population.
Very, very.
And the rest of the world is an old population. If you look at Japan, for example, it's an old population. United States, we're having one of the biggest industries that are going to be huge in the next 10 years is the elderly care and anything that has to do with elderly care. So it's
very fascinating. Like when you think about it, especially when you put it in context of Somalia specifically, over 80% of Somalis on this planet are under the age of 35. So it's like we are a very young group of people. Our mortality rate isn't so great, but it's like we are a young collective of people. So it's very fascinating. And when
most of us, sorry to cut you, but most of us, if you think about it,
are young.
If you are young and we're just 2-3 years old when the Civil War happened.
Exactly.
Wow. So most of us didn't even experience a stable Somalia.
Majority of us didn't. What we know of Somalia is, hey, this is the place that my parents ran away from, or majority of us. There are some who because Somali people aren't like the war happened and they bursted onto the world to see. There's Somali people who were educated in America 1920s who have been here in the 60s.
One of our sources is a brother called Abdurrahman Hirsi who he did his PhD in UCLA, California, University of California, Los Angeles, in 1970, where he, did a 300-page PhD on how the Arab and Somali relationship is, the cultural relationship between the Arab influence in the Somali culture.
Exactly.
So we've been around the world.
Yeah, we've been around the world. There's records of Somalia, especially in North America, like Ellis Island, Somali people coming in, going to school. It's not like the war happened and then boom, we bursted on the scene.
Right.
All these Somalis, where did they come from?
Yeah.
We're talking about just in general. We don't want to leave anybody out.
Right.
That's the Somali we're talking about. And to continue the conversation about as far as the population goes, Somalia, the 2 largest cities, right? There's Mogadishu and Hargeisa, right? Mogadishu has 1.4 million as of 2017-ish recording, 1.4 million people living there, and then Hargeisa has about 1.2 million.
Hargeisa is 1.2?
Hargeisa 1.2 million.
I didn't think Hargeisa was that big.
Hargeisa has 1.2 million. It's a large place, man. And all of these, along with everything that we discuss here on the podcast, we urge you as a listener to go do your own research as well. We want you to we want to build a community, essentially, where people want to fact check each other, and we want to discuss these things as a community and get to the root of who we are, where we come from, and just basically do this together.
So some facts that we have to make it clear though. Some facts are facts.
Some facts are facts.
And they're not
numbers.
Facts are not up for debate. Like alternative facts.
Okay.
Somali people. If you say that some Somali people will stop us right away in the introduction and say, you're including Hargeisa as part of Somalia? Hargeisa is not part of Somalia. They would argue, right? They would say it's Somaliland. It's a country that is trying to be its own country. It's a region that's... And I just want to make it publicly clear that in my opinion, in my personal opinion, there's only one Somalia. And internationally recognized one Somalia. There is not a Somaliland, a Somali area, a South Somalia, Jubaland, Puntland. Although I recognize personally the autonomous regions of Somalia and the autonomous tribes that live in each region.
Trying to govern themselves.
I respect that. That's natural.
It's like you saying that you don't respect Texas and you live in another state.
So Texas doesn't have to have the same rules as far as Minnesota, and we know that. But for example, in America, they all agree under a unified universal agreements that keeps them all together, and some rules can be subject to the area. And that's basically how I believe as far as Somalia should be. Not exactly, but they also should have the same understanding that you can be autonomous. You can have your own little rules as far as Hargeisa goes. Hargeisa can be culturally a little bit different than Somali and Mogadishu and Bosaso. But in my opinion, with all due respect to the brothers and sisters from Hargeisa, we only have one Somalia that is recognized throughout the world.
And that's what we're working with, right? And it's very important that you stated that at the end. There's no disrespect. We're literally working off of what is established. If next year it's established that Puntland, Somaliland, all these places, they become their own autonomous, recognized by the UN nations, then okay, cool. Then we can have a conversation. Then that's a fact that we'll have to live with moving forward.
Right.
Somalia, then we'll discuss it that way. But as it stands right now, what we are discussing is Somalia as it is known currently and what it's recognized. Essentially, that's what we're talking about. Now, in reference to the diaspora, the distribution of Somalis abroad, it's a bit shaky. It's a bit uncertain. Primarily due to the confusion between the number of ethnic Somalis, people who are like families are Somali as far as their genetics, their blood, all that stuff, and the number of Somali nationals who just have a Somali passport or a citizenship. Whereas most recent Somali migrants in the diaspora immigrated as refugees and asylum seekers, just how we were talking about before. There's a distinction between some Somalis that came here in the 50s and 60s. We all have family members who were traveling to Russia and Italy and the UK and going abroad to study and become doctors and engineers and all these things. We all have family members that were doing that prior to the war and the things that happened. But we're just primarily discussing here the refugees and asylum seekers as of due to the civil war in the late 80s and early 90s. Many have since obtained either permanent residence or citizenship. In total, the ethnic Somali international migrant population includes an estimated, just estimation, 1,100,000 ethnic Somalis globally, worldwide. The numbers so far, they state that around 300,000 residents reside in East and South Africa, meaning like in Kenya South Africa, those places, about 300,000. And then in North America, we have approximately 250,000 Somalis as of last recording, and another 250,000 in Europe, and roughly about 200,000 in the Middle East and UAE and those regions as well. And the final part of it, the report says that it's about approximately 10,000 Somalis in the Oceania region, meaning like Australia and New Zealand, in those areas.
So if you think about it, you said earlier the Somali people, in one of the reports you said they're one of the most homogeneous people in Africa. But now if you think about it, the homogeneous nature of culture, your religion, your language is only in Somalia, the people that live in Somalia.
Pretty much,
But the diaspora is really not the same.
It's not the same.
We consider ourselves, the few of us that are in America, Somali American, right? And we've adopted to some degree the American culture, the American lifestyle, the American view of the world, and we consider ourselves Somali American, right?
Or American Somali.
Or American Somali, interchangeable.
Yeah.
But the other brothers and sisters that live in UK or Kenya or Saudi Arabia, they also have their identity as Somali, but they also have their identity as citizens of those countries and people who adopted these countries and became citizens, and those countries are their countries as well. Just like Somalia is a birthplace where you live and you educated and you become part of the population, then you are in essence a part of that country, right? So the homogenous thing actually doesn't, in my opinion, and I think you can agree, it doesn't apply to the diaspora.
It doesn't apply to diaspora as much, and that's the tricky thing about identity, right? Identity, it's a deeply personal decision, right? It's what I can't tell you who you are, right? I can tell you as far as what you choose to. Me personally, this is what I believe, right? And again, again, just to clarify, in this show, Muhammad and I, we may differ on a few things here. So we like to say in Somali culture, everyone is responsible for their own opinion. So you'll hear a lot of, in my personal opinion, because every man, woman, and child is.
You own your opinion.
You own your opinion. That's the first thing that you learn in Somali. You'll hear a lot of yelling and people getting real personal, but it's what you own as an individual. And in my personal opinion, I view identity as a deeply personal thing. It's like what you decide to clarify yourself as. If I want to view myself as an American Somali first, I'm American and then I'm Somali. I was born in America. This is all I've ever known. I'm not near a large Somali population. The only Somalis that I interact with are my immediate family, my father, my mother, my aunts and uncles. That's my Somalia. And in context of my personal life, I view myself as an American first. There's those people, right, that are also Somali. For me, as Muhammad right now, to go to that person and be like, no, you're Somali. You're Somali first. Know your place in the world. It'll be disrespectful to them. Right. So we all want to reach that agreement.
And I to some degree I agree. To some extent I do 100% agree.
Yeah.
But for example, the other part of it is you're right. It's on the person.
Yeah.
But I would argue as well it's the environment that actually whether the person likes it or not.
Exactly.
So if the person that you're explaining to who might say I am Somali, but they've been living in America for 30 years, they can say they're Somali first, but they are American in my style. In my opinion, they're American.
Exactly.
And they are Somali.
Yeah.
Why do I say that? Because you can't be in America and thinking that the environment and the lifestyle of America
is identical.
Is like you're in a bubble. You cannot be in a bubble unless you came to America and lived in a cave. You know what I mean?
You've been exposed to other cultures and other.
Yes, America is a multi cultural nation, and the good thing about America, aside from Europe, is America. You don't hear, for example, in France, you don't hear French Somali. You don't hear French Chinese. You don't hear French such and such. It's just French. You have to be French because the people that are there have been ethnically French for thousands and thousands of years. But America, the special thing about America is it's a country that allows you and actually celebrates to some degree that the uniqueness of the ethnicity that you came from. And that's why we see Irish Americans, German American, Italian American.
They acknowledge where you come from.
They acknowledge, America is let's say you agree with this bottom line ideals and values that we all as a country, as a people agree on. But as far as what food you eat, what language you talk at home,
you can keep that.
You can keep that. You can celebrate that. You can have your
Somali
night,
your
Chinatown, your all that stuff, and that's the beautiful thing. And that's what allows the part that you were talking about, the person to identify who they are by themselves and say, I am Chinese, and then I am also American. I am American, and I'm also Somali. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the environment also does play a role. You cannot.
And then the French. You're super deep into soccer and football. I don't watch football that much, but didn't France have that whole issue where majority of their soccer players were from African countries, and then the French the coach of the France on the World Cup said something to the extent of, he basically wasn't acknowledging that the players were from Africa, and when those countries were trying to take ownership and say, yeah, we're Africans, we did it,
right?
He was like, these people are French. They're not. Right. They're not Moroccan, Algerian. They're not. They're not from Africa. Leave that out of that. They had a controversy.
That's a very interesting
exactly
point. You're right.
You're talking about.
You're right. In America, you wouldn't have that. In America, if you had a team in America where half of the team is people who first generation immigrants, some have been born in other countries but raised in America,
exactly.
Then that person would say, I am an American who is a descendant of Italian family. Exactly. You know what I mean? And that would not be a contradiction in American. You
just understand. But some other places in the world, it boggles the brain a little bit.
Right.
I get upset. So continuing on with the conversation as far as kind of setting the stage for where Somali people are in the world, right? The largest concentration of Somali people in North America, ding ding ding, is Minnesota, right? It's where we're currently it's where we're currently from and recording from. The Minnesota State Demographic Center gave an estimate that there are between 40,000 and 52,000 Somalis in Minnesota as of 2016, right? 2016. That includes people born in Somalia and of Somali descent. However, more recently, the consensus is that there are approximately 80,000 Somalis living in the state of Minnesota.
I wouldn't be surprised. 80,000 seems
it doesn't seem like
logical,
a lot. Me personally, when I saw that number, I said 80,000. That doesn't seem a lot for some reason. Numbers kind of confuse me a bit. But for comparison, you could fit the residents of, say, Brooklyn Park within those numbers. So you could fill the whole city of Brooklyn Park, whole of St. Cloud. St. Cloud has 60,000 citizens, right? That's imagine all of St. Cloud just Somali people walking around, right? So Somalis in Minnesota is a pretty large conglomerate. And furthermore, on the report that I read online, it basically says Somalis in Minnesota, their purchasing power, meaning the businesses that they own.
Right.
I think we're making, right?
We should actually do a whole episode just about the
majority of
economic footprint of the Somali people in Minnesota and America in general.
Even not even just Minnesota. Somali people from what's established, not only like my opinion and articles I've read, and it's well documented historically throughout history due to the strategic location of Somalia and where it is on the world map. And as far as trade goes, Somali people are deeply
entrepreneurial.
Exactly. They were very business minded, very oriented towards trade, and that's just the nature of it. When I read the report specific to most of this episode is literally just us introducing the podcast to you as a listener and seeing what type of vibe you're going to get from it. Towards the end of it, we will have afterthoughts where you can kind of get to know us a little bit more. We'll talk about each other personally. But back to the point here, Somali purchasing power in Minnesota. It's about $150 to $346 million. It's annually, yearly, as of 2017, the last report that they had. They don't have 2018 out yet. There's approximately 600 to 800 businesses owned by Somali people. 600 to 800.
So you could say if the some of the political rhetoric that's happening in the country, if you say that all the Somali people legal immigrants and non-immigrants or whatever, and they all have been deported tomorrow, you would safely say there's going to be a economic depression or a recession of some kind because we have a huge
claim to this. So and that even goes deeper into the topic of the diaspora and what they contribute to the world, right? When you look at the numbers specifically, and again, I cannot stress this enough, we want you as a listener to take ownership, especially if you're Somali and you're young and you want to know more about yourself and where you come from. We want you to take ownership and responsibility to go out and seek out this information. Come back to us with new information and say, oh, hey guys, I can't believe I never knew that. But Somali, the diaspora, how much do you think we send back annually?
I think it's. I once read in what was it? World Bank
Yeah, the World Bank. Yeah,
the World Bank
the
report.
last report. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was around 4 billion.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's that report probably is newer. The official one that I read annually, as far as the UK, North America, stuff like that goes, I don't think it may have included other regions like the UAE. It mainly focused on UK and America, North America and the UK, mainly the West.
Yeah, and I know America. America is
like
the number one.
It's 1.92 billion. It's $2 billion that Somali from the diaspora outside of in the West majority are sending back to Somalia.
And Somali Americans send the highest.
Sending the highest. So it's $2 billion that Somalis are sending back to Somalia to support and do family business and things like that. And this report was basically from 2016. So now I'm pretty sure it's probably doubled.
The remittance industry. It's a huge international industry.
It's a huge, because you have Habashil.
All these money transfer
all these
companies. What was it? And so many countries live off of, like, their economy is actually dependent on remittances.
Exactly.
Somalia is one of those countries. For example, India.
Mm-hmm.
India is, if you look at the data, India is a hugely dependent on remittances. Mexico has a huge dependent on remittances. Yeah. A lot of countries. Somalia is the same. So it's not unique to that Somalia degree.
It's unique in the respect that it's not, as far as I understand it, me personally, it's not, when you put it in context, it's not as well known. Like, I never knew that Somalis outside of Somalia were contributing that much to the country of Somalia, where they come from, where their family resides. Right. It plays off of the notion that, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that are said about immigrants in the world, and specifically even Somalia, especially if you're living in North America, where the whole image is these people need our help. These people, they're dependent. When they come to the country, they're,
on welfare mostly.
Mostly on welfare. They're, they don't assimilate properly. They don't know how to function without us. We're doing them a favor. In actuality, when you look at things like this, when it comes to Somalia, it's kind of, the roles are reversed a bit.
It's actually totally the other side.
Yeah.
One time I was in a what was it? It was a home purchasing workshop, and the guy who was presenting and to the mostly Somali audience, and he was from one of the local banks, and he was saying, you guys should buy homes, and he was talking about the process of buying homes, but in the middle of it, he just said, what's interesting? Whenever I see a Somali person and I try to pitch them a business idea as far as buying a home and talking to them about that, instead of them taking the customer viewpoint and asking me more questions about the product that I'm selling, they have the hat of a business partner. And they just say, "Oh, okay, so how do you do this?"
That's not a good policy, man. You should do this differently.
They actually the questions that they ask is more of a person who's trying to invest with the bank and become an investor of the.
What percentage do you take? What's going on? What's this?
That's the mindset that we have everywhere you go. Whatever Somali person that you see, that's the number one thing that they're gonna. We don't have a consumption and a customer mindset only. Although we are customers to a lot of Somali stores and also
well informed.
We also want to be part of that business opportunity. Any business opportunity.
Don't want to miss out. So it's interesting. It's interesting just to think about it. And we've been talking about Minnesota primarily as far as the business aspect goes in North America. But there's, you have Columbus, Ohio, you have Toronto, you have all these other places where Somali people are thriving and they're doing great things. They're financially successful. They're contributing a lot of business to the brand that is Somali.
What was it? In Sweden, a Swedish delegation that came to Carmel Mall in 2007. I remember this was in the NPR news and all over Star Tribune, all over the local media. A Swedish delegation, wafdi or Swedish, came all the way from Sweden and visited Minneapolis.
Beautiful.
And went to all the malls and all the small businesses. And you know what they're studying? They're trying to study why are the Somali population in Minnesota, especially in Minnesota and throughout the United States, why are they more business-wise? Why are they more able to open all these businesses compared to the Somali population in Sweden?
Yeah.
If you look at it, I'm sure there's a lot of Somali businesses in Sweden, but
it's not comparable if you're being truthful.
It's totally day and night. So that's what they're trying to study. And is it
are they not providing enough opportunities to?
That's what I think. That's what I think.
I'm not giving enough.
I think it's the opportunity that is being provided. America's
very unique when it comes to that.
Yeah,
I'll give it credit.
You have to be part of it. You have to run and get.
American dream. You got to pursue it. You got to run with it.
And Sweden is more of a what is it? Less of a capitalist and a more
it's
of
two different countries, two different policies,
social governments.
And then if we have any listeners from Sweden, we would love to hear your voice as well.
Right, that's a good perspective.
That we can tell. We can definitely, you can tell us, hey, you guys are wrong about my country. You don't know what you're talking about. So that's perfectly fine. We have, we're gonna take a small break here, and we'll be right back and continue the discussion we're having.
Sawdkan aqaana Somali weeyo sinjigayga dhalashadu Somali weeyo samayskayga aadane Somali weeyo ruuxaan salaama Somali weeyo sad waxaan la quutaa Somali weeyo saaxiib waxaan nahay Somali weeyo gogoshaan ku seexda Somali weeyo Acta meeshan saara Somali weeyo jirka meesha laysara Somali weeyo ma ogoli safaadkiyo kala soocidooda.
And we're back. This is basically just an introduction to what the podcast is, kind of getting you familiar with the format a little bit. When we do have the next episode coming out, it will be posted every Wednesday, right? Is that what we agreed on? Every Wednesday, hopefully, it'll be posted. And moving forward, we'll have more of a concise, targeted topic that we're going to be discussing. We will try our best to go in chronological order as far as Somalia's history goes, and we will be discussing largely Somalia, the country's history, not as far as like the diaspora and where people are from and where did they go and all these things like that. We're talking about Somalia, the country, its maritime history. What role did it play in the Silk Road? Who was Ibn Battuta? I think all these things, Mensa Musa, all these things, a lot of amazing things. Islam in Somalia. What was Somalia before Islam arrived? Nomadic history. A lot of British explorers. What did they say about your country, your people? How did they identify? Yep, the tribe dynamics, and we know, that's a huge. And this is the thing that we were also discussing off air, and give you a little bit of inside baseball, even though I don't watch baseball, but still give you a little bit of inside baseball. What it's going to be, to give a bit of background information on what our podcast is. Essentially, it's like we want to give each topic the necessary, adequate, respectful amount of time that it can take. We don't want to make this feel rushed. We want to respect all parties and make sure that we discuss everything properly and thoroughly enough and do our research for each episode. We don't want things to seem like we're pushing a narrative or rushing through a topic because it's uncomfortable for us. We will get into Qabil. We will talk about it specifically.
Qabil. It's a huge topic. It's what the Somali identity was, as far as we were talking about earlier, identity. We were talking about identity in a general sense and in a global sense, right? Yeah. But within the Somali community, it's actually amazing how identity is very, very interesting because people identify first with their Qabil, their tribe.
Exactly.
And it's a huge topic that we cannot
run away from. And for our listeners who don't know what Qabil is, basically tribes. It's clans. It has deeper meaning than that, but essentially that's what it boils down to. It's just your tribe, your clan. And Somalia, just the past 30 years, there's a lot of scar as far as it goes with Qabil goes. People don't have the best relationship when talking about it. However, it is a part of our history. And it played a lot for the majority of the thousands and thousands and thousands of years that Somalia has been around. It's played a role in the politics and the dynamics of it. The last 30 years haven't been the best record for it, but it's right.
We don't want to cut. 100%. That's we tend to in the Somali community we tend to bash qabil and say all the bad things about of the tribalism, and that's to some degree.
Some things are right.
To some degree, that rhetoric is justified.
Justified, exactly.
But the tribal society that the pre-modern Somali people used to live in, when we get to those episodes and discuss them, you would see that there is a lot of social contracts, a lot of social agreements called, for example, her, and that used to govern the Somali people without a central government.
Yeah, there was no Somalia. There was just there
was just nomadic people that used to border each other, used to live together, and what used to
her used to govern them.
That used to govern them. It's agreements based on the tribal agreements, tribal laws, and
how not to offend people.
Right,
we went through.
There was compensation that used to be paid. On just offending people, without even like
not even physical harm, just you hurt my feelings, you compensate me. So that's exactly to bring back.
That's
to
the
point
good
earlier.
side of the qabil that people should not run away from. It's a beautiful system, social system
before
it's not used in a racist way within the Somali people.
Before there was, you just have to view it this way. Before there was any sense of government and societal structure system, Qabil was there to provide security for the elderly, the sick. If you're part of my tribe, my family, my extended family, I have no connection to you other than the fact that you're part of my name. I'm going to provide you shelter. I'm going to provide you food. I'll take care of you if you're an elderly person, simply because somewhere along the line
we share the same
grandfather, right? So, but just to kind of broaden and bring it back the conversation to what the podcast is about. The podcast, the crux for me personally, I can only talk about myself, right?
You can own your opinion.
I can own my opinion. Personally, I come from a background where I'd say just the past 5 years was when I actually got closer to Somali people and the brand that is Somali, right? Prior to that, I didn't have a lot of Somali friends. I wasn't in that community a lot. So, but now that in the future I'm in the Somali community more, I'm trying to self-identify and figure out where I come from, and it's an exploration period. I'm trying to figure out what the background is, where is all this going.
For me, it's actually it's interesting that you say that. For me, it's also similar, but I've spent most of my time around the Somali community and Somali people, even though I've been here for 15 years almost. I do see both sides, so this is going to be a good balance for our audience. And to also say something more about that is, in the upcoming episodes, hopefully I will try to speak more Somali, so that way our audience who actually wants to learn Somali,
give us a little practice run, man.
waa ku hadli karaa Somali rabo inaan ku hadlo
right there.
Si muxuu ahaa xaaladda u noqoto wax laba qof oo Somali aan ahnay, luqadda Somali inay noqoto waxa ku hadlayno waa inay noqotaa luqadda oo podcasting ay ku hadlay, like English no soo gelinayna adigoo English ku hadlaysa most of the time, anigana Somali ku hadla badana waxa rabaa inaan Somali ku hadlo si dadka u fahmaan, dadka Somali yaqaaniin iyo dadka Somaliga baranayaanba in muxuu ahaa
and we are a perfect representation of what it is to be Somali in the West, in the diaspora, right? Majority of the Somali kids right now running around, me personally, in my experience, I never spoke Somali very well. However, I understood exactly what my parents or whoever was speaking to me was saying. I couldn't repeat. It would be butchered. And what are you talking about? But I could understand everything you're saying verbatim, right? Yeah. So you and I, we both represent two different dichotomies in the world and bring it together.
And that's every Somali household.
It's like that.
Every Somali household, the parents are first generation born and raised in Somalia. The kids are more likely to be born here and speak English. But if you study and look at and pay attention to the conversation in the household, you'll see the mom talking Somali and the son or the daughter listening and understanding fully what the parent is saying, but they speak in English. And the parents understand some of the concepts of the
what
English
the kids trying to say.
What the kids trying to say. And that's what we want to represent here. Aniga af Somali ku hadla, af Somaliga ba isticmaala luqadda Soomaaliga inaan ku hadlo. Muxuu ahaa Maxamedna wuxuu ku hadlaa af Ingiriiska.
So tell me, we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes. So in a brief summary, I'm going to go here real quick. The people that we're trying to reach here, our demographic, We will broaden it in the future. However, just here now in this very moment, very first episode introduction, speaking about Somalia's history and everything like that. Me personally, the demographic I'm trying to reach is people who are of ethnically Somali descent. They live in North America or in the West, and globally diaspora. Like, we just want people. We want to encourage people to seek out their history. It's only human nature to want to know where you come from.
Right.
Where you're from, you have history. You can point on the map and say, hey, I'm from this area. What is this area? Someday I want to go visit. I need to know more about it. That's the people that I want to reach and kind of encourage them to do research and figure out about their history.
Right. And that doesn't mean that we exclude any fellow American citizens, fellow
just anybody,
people around the world who are interested in the Somali culture. We have, and so Minnesota is interesting in a way because we see a lot of fellow Americans, people who are not of Somali descent or even African descent. Some are from European descent who speak fluent Somali. And those people are also our audience. And we welcome you, and we want you to actually reach out to us. If you are enjoying so far the first episode, we are going to, like Muhammad said, go into details and expand. But if you're really someone in Minnesota or in the world in general who is not Somali and learned Somali language and has been for some reason interacting with Somali people and knows the Somali language, we would love you to reach out for us and also listen to this podcast. Absolutely. Someone who comes to mind is actually in my high school time when I was going to high school. I remember this lady who used to sit in the front door, like the security guard. She wasn't a security guard, but she was checking in students and checking out students. So, for example, if a student is coming in late, she opens the door for them and has them sign something. And if they're leaving early, she used to sit in that desk for 4 years. I used to see her, and she started having books, and then she used to read a lot of books. And then day by day, when we come in, she says, "Salam alaikum." Say hi. Salam alaikum. Say hi. And when we leave, she says, "Goodbye. See you. Khaira kurijena. Ma salama."
Wow.
Brother, at the end of my school time, I kid you not, this woman was talking fluent Somali.
Beautiful.
Fluent Somali.
Beautiful.
Mind-boggling how, like, a lot of Somali people, when we see somebody who's not Somali,
we get shocked. We
get shocked. But I was so happy. I really was so happy. And I respect that person. And it's so amazing.
No,
so
definitely.
there's a lot of people like that in Minnesota. We have U of M classes where Somali people teach, and the students, most of the students are from American, all across the world, European descent, and
they just want to know more.
Yeah.
And that is true. Like, if you want to know more about Somalia, this will be the perfect program because we will be discussing its history, culture, people, all of that. So I appreciate you listening in. Please, follow, subscribe,
follow, send us the feedback if you have a specific topic that you want to
discuss. The next episode, just to give you a little preview, it'll be, again, going in chronological order. It'll basically be discussing Somalia pre-Islam, the nomadic era, and all of that. That's what we'll be discussing primarily. Look forward to you listening next time. And
looking forward to it.
It's a wrap, man. It's a wrap. Beautiful, man.